Hey guys, Deslater Magic here, and as you may have heard from some rather alarmist people, or LGS perhaps, the sky is falling, and by the sky I mean the BFZ and Shadows blocks. They're going to cycle out in about 2 months, September 29th specifically, so everybody panic sell your cards from those blocks and don't use them even if your deck absolutely requires them because you can't afford to lose, that 50 cents per card in value, right? If the sarcasm didn't explain my take on it, nothing will. But this isn't about card prices and sellability this time, this is about strategy post-rotation. Others fear change, I see opportunities. So a more specific video, or videos I should say, will be coming as the date gets closer, but for now let's talk about rotation and cycling out of sets and the consequences and the strategies in general. Magic is very different when there are 5 blocks legal compared to when there are 8 legal, and of course 8 I think are too many. 8, by the way, is where we're at currently. Now keep in mind, theoretically, less cards being legal means less robust, less fast, less tuned decks, but specifically, which cards actually get printed on an individual level can override this. In other words, if they print fast cards that don't cost much mana and have high attack power, then there you go, the metagame could get pretty fast with early wins, even if there aren't a lot of, sets legal. At the moment, the Amonkhet block kind of slightly resembles that. A lot of the better Red Rush cards are not from that block, though. They're about to cycle out. But generally, more cards to choose from equals more powerful decks. For the most obvious example, just look at the Eternal formats versus Modern versus Standard. The power levels scale exactly with the number of unique cards that can potentially work together. And the logic on this is quite simple. It's basically, this card makes enter the battlefield effects go off twice. Okay, what does it work with? If there are more options on a wide open card like that, a more powerful combination is more likely to happen. By the way, that's a real example from Standard right now, it's called Panharmonicon. So then there are common recurring tribal types like humans or zombies, where every single set adds more of them, it's almost a guarantee. So overall, the power level should go down when we lose 4 sets, right? Not necessarily, but probably. What is extremely predictable and consistent are slower decks in that there are mathematically less options for 1, 2, and 3 cost spells. There are especially less good options. I mean, there are options, but are they actually playable? So that means everyone sort of has like this silent agreement that decks can easily be 2 turns slower on average and still be competitive with each other and have like a realistic chance of winning at FNM. Now, even if it's not some kind of like subconscious collusion, it's just what happens because the cards to support an amazing turbo fast deck just aren't there. They just don't exist. The best example of this, the most basic recurring one, is losing a large portion of flying creatures. Good luck with rapid early wins if the cheapest ones, in an all-flying deck cycled out, and now you can't win until 2 turns later, just mathematically with getting to 20 damage. Also, if you want a kill spell or a counter spell, maybe now it costs 1 more mana because, the better option cycled out. So the next FNM after the big cycle out expects slower decks. You can almost universally expect that in general. Now there are many more considerations past this simple fact though. When any set launches, even when it purely adds cards to the pool, without cycling anything out of legality, people get strange new ideas for decks, and they aren't quite perfected or tuned for speed and effectiveness after practically no testing time, so the end result is just more fragile, slower, less focused decks, and they're coming to FNM, for at least a couple weeks. Also keep in mind that FNM may be missing the incredibly lazy people who refuse to build a deck, through their own skills in the meantime, before the Pro Tour comes out with what's basically the list of net decks. Those people just want to copy what they perceive as the best deck, build it, and beat everyone. They want the easy mode. By the way, a little side note, how is Red Rush doing after the Pro Tour? I mean, I feel bad for all the dumb net deckers that don't know deck design or the metagame or the game at all, basically. And they built it because it finished, in the top quite proficiently, and it was kind of cheap and easy. And now they can't win a game with it, because Red Rush can't win a damn thing. It never has and never will. It's always a dumb gimmick. Well, except that I don't feel bad at all, and screw those people. So, have I mentioned before that net decking does not equate to the running quote of the best deck, as everyone likes to pretend? Oh crap, Des is talking about net deckers again. You might as well get up, maybe make some food, maybe vacuum and dust, file your quarterly tax estimates. Just kidding, mini rant over. I'm here to educate the people on the maladies of net decking in basically any video. Anyway, depending upon your local community at your LGS, a lot of people tend to build a lot of new deck ideas with new mechanics. And like I said, the net deckers just won't even show up until they have a deck to copy from somebody else. So either the regular people come up with a new deck with a new mechanic, or they had an idea before, but it turned out a little bit too weak, but now finally the card support showed up for it, and it's in the new set, and so they quickly put it together, and then, you know, still experimental decks almost always need changing. Like even Gravity Bomb, one of my most basic, you know, just single-purpose decks that shockingly actually dominated competitive play in my area for weeks unopposed. But I still made some balancing tweaks to make it better. So the moral of the story is, people will show up with not quite perfect decks, so you can too without getting completely blown out of the water. That's the whole, oh, everything's 2 turns slower, okay, whatever, everybody's cool, level playing field. Now that said, do test your deck on X-Mage or with friends if possible, just so that you can adjust it ahead of time and get the tweaking done before you actually go lose at F&M with it a couple times, because then you're just in the same boat as everybody else. So that's the typical deck designer, normal, average player version of, you know, my advice and what to expect. If that matches your local player personality, then great. But here's the, no, seriously, I want to take advantage of the situation and win packs while the EV is high version of how to handle a rotation. There are 2 options that historically, for me and others I've talked to, have worked. First, just slightly improve a well-performing deck from the past and throw in whatever cards from the new set are an improvement. I mean, why experiment with, like, energy decks when Black-Red Madness works just fine, it always has, and Kaladesh actually added some really decent control spells at the time to make it better. I mean, people are still trying to balance out their energy decks and get them to work and draw cards on time, and you're just sitting there with, you know, vampires flying in just destroying everything. Established decks are established for a reason, so if you personally have a deck that works, I would bring that. So you would go from winning often in the past to a slightly upgraded deck versus people that are now running jankier experimental decks. So you got better, they got worse. It's practically a guaranteed win. Now, obviously, you're already probably thinking, what if half my deck cycled out and it doesn't work even at a basic level anymore now because we're talking about cycling out? Good question. Obviously, the slight caveat to this strategy is it works best when new sets release and nothing cycles out. But keep in mind, I mean, your deck has to not have been destroyed by the rotation, I guess I'll say, and it has to actually still be playable. So if that's the case, then okay, proceed with this strategy. So that said, you can technically take like a mono white life gain first strike deck and lose 12 cards out of it to rotation, and then just replace them with slightly worse, like, second choice cards from the remaining pool, and still have a darn good deck. After all, I mean, everybody else lost cards too, remember? So a slight power up or a slight power down are both acceptable and likely to perform well. Now, the second strategy is pretty obvious to people who paid attention to Hour of Devastation's release. Simply build the fastest, do nothing, nothing works together, no synergy, no complexity rush control deck. You know, the old, like, 8 to 10 control spells to stop your opponent from doing something out of control that dominates, and then, like, 30 to 32 of the fastest, lowest mana, hardest hitting, maybe flying, maybe unblockable, maybe first strike, mono or 2-color deck, and just start shock and awing people every single match. Just put a brick on the gas pedal and drive it off into victory. You know why Red Rush did so well at the Pro Tour when honestly it's not that great of a deck overall? Because of tons of on-color card support, obviously, but more importantly, nobody expected it and nobody prepared for it. That is how you win a Pro Tour. Just have nobody ready for that type of deck. If people are prepared for it, usually that means their sideboard can handle it and you're not going to win. So that does in fact translate to the local level quite well a lot of the time. So like I said, bring the blitz and just hit your opponent's experimental decks with shock and awe, and that does typically result in a lot of wins. Now, if that particular strategy sounds exploitative and rude, just keep in mind that anybody can bring anything. At least you're not like net decking, at least you actually built the deck and put in some effort and are playing the game the way Wizards intended, and you're helping them prepare for that circumstance, which may be a real threat or a weak point to their deck. Like, they have to be ready for a fast deck. Think about it. How often do you improve your deck after you win at FNM in general compared to if you lose? By the way, pro tip, whether you win or lose, improve your deck based on your observations during play. If something isn't working, something's not matching up, or you just wish you had more first strikers or whatever, okay, do that, add it. And honestly, on the same theme, sideboard better, more efficient, more relevant cards in from your sideboard, even if you won the first match. A lot of people don't even consider that. They're like, I won, my deck's good enough, I don't need to make it better. When the hell would you ever not have to make your deck better? Make it better, you want to win. So like I said, if you're just going for wins, not inventive, new, amazing, complex deck types, that's all the advice I have on how to execute that devious plan in one of two ways. But if you're a hardcore deck builder and want to get rolling immediately on your exciting new ideas for decks that you had, I'd obviously completely get behind that as well, because winning isn't everything at FNM, and if you enjoy deck building almost more than playing, which would be me, then there you go. Also, if your deck idea is good enough, you'll win it anyway, so, this is not a binary condition. One does not exclude the other. So hopefully you enjoyed this little bit of general advice. I know it was sort of oriented to newer players, as this is totally not news to longtime players, but I do make videos for all kinds of players, of course. Speaking of all kinds of players can enjoy the awesome benefits of a Discover credit card. Worst segue ever, but you could buy a Segway with a Discover card, by the way. They're not formally sponsoring my channel in the traditional sense, but that is a referral link down in the description, and I get money if you sign up. Yay! I'd appreciate it greatly, of course, if you checked out their different card perks, and honestly, they do beat Visa and MasterCard hands down. That's all I'm going to say. This is the short version of the plug. I have 4 cards, and this is by far the most commonly used one that I actually use on a daily basis, mostly because of the 5% cashback categories. I mean, you can't really beat that. That's like equivalent to sales tax. So check it out if you want. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys will do well after the rotation. And like I said, September 29th, who cares? Don't even think about it. And I'll see you guys next video.